Evil demons, wretched monsters, haunted houses, graveyards.
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
All right, well, welcome to your weekly homeownership podcast. This is your annual reminder to get outside and clean all the leaves and the pine straw and the gunk and the junk off of your roof.
Yeah.
And also to get in your attics, like I did today, and flush your HVAC system.
Oh my goodness.
With some bleach.
I have no idea how to do that, so you're going to have to teach me.
Oh, you haven't done that?
I've never done
your
that.
House?
But I also got a new...
Oh my God, I should have done that when I was there.
I got a new system. Yeah, Christian helped me out today. Christian got all the roofs off my leaves. He got all the leaves off my roof today.
I got all the roofs off her house.
So thankfully I have no more roof.
Totally exposed.
Very much appreciated though. It's I'm not a good homeowner. I'm sure that's surprising to no one. But
no, you're a great homeowner.
Questionable.
And
the ghost here would also disagree.
I was going to say, you're a better homeowner because you know more about your home history because you found out today.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, Christian and I attract strange entities into one another's lives because I've heard his stories about his house and his stuff.
Yep.
And I've always been present when people have like dropped knowledge bombs on him about his house.
Yes.
Well, then today he's at my house on my roof. And this woman drives up and like signals me over to her car. And I was like, okay. And so I went over to her car and she tells me that she's the neighbor. She lives across the street, not directly, but like on my street. And she's like, I just wanted to say hi. I haven't said, which I've lived in this house for 3 years. Granted, two of them have been a pandemic. So 2 of them have been a pandemic fully.
That's fair.
So I haven't really interacted with my neighbors that much, which I told Christian after this woman left. But she lives across the street, and she said that she and her sister built these houses, my house and the house that she lives in, which my house was built in the 80s, so not that long ago. But she said that they built these houses, and then she started to tear up and said that her sister had passed away, which, I mean, I obviously got the house somehow, right? But I get mail from multiple people, so I don't know who has lived here in that time.
A few people have lived in your house.
A few people. But this woman starts crying. She said that she's like experienced all of these like family and holiday events in my house. And she just misses her sister and wanted to introduce herself to me as she's crying.
Which is so sweet and sad.
It's very sweet and very sad.
But it's weird timing.
It's weird timing. And then I immediately, once she left, of course, Christian and I like go into my backyard. And I said to Christian, you know, did this woman die in my house? Like, is that a thing? I don't know. But obviously I couldn't ask her that. So
I wanted to go across the street and be like, hey, lady, how'd your sister die? Where'd she die? What happened?
I can't do that. I just can't. And it's probably like we were just saying before we started recording. Sometimes ignorance is truly bliss.
Yeah.
But obviously you've heard me have my weird, like flashy light paranormal things here. So I thought I'd tell you guys, in addition to your, you know, home ownership line items, spring cleaning.
Yeah, it's that time of year, guys.
Check on your poltergeists and ghosts and make sure they're doing well too.
Just check in. Check in with the spirits in your home. Make sure they're doing okay. Make sure they don't need anything. Because if they need something, you're not listening. They're gonna make you listen.
They're gonna,
and
you
don't want that to happen.
You should definitely be proactive about this.
Be proactive. Yeah, and yeah. So there's been a lot of weird energy the past few days. We've had some pretty crazy storms come through our town.
We did. Mm-hmm.
Or our part of the continent, really. It's been massive storms.
Yeah.
Like power blipping, going out, whatever, weird lights flashing. There was some strange energy for like one whole day. My house, your house, my parents' house.
Everywhere.
It was Easter, wasn't it?
It was Easter, yeah.
Ooh. What a day.
What a day to have these things happen. I literally, the power went out when I was falling asleep a couple nights ago. I've already told Christian this, but it was like 1 a.m. I heard it like go out, you know, everything zaps down. I was like, okay, whatever. I was awoken rudely at 4 a.m. by I have like a stick Dyson vacuum cleaner because I have cats.
Very rude. He didn't ask permission at all.
No, not at all. And I guess the power came back on and my vacuum cleaner came on too, even though it's like a push button. Like you have to be holding the button for it to be on, like when you use it. And it revved on fully for like a good 8 to 10 seconds at 4 a.m.
I'd have been out of my skin.
I was out of the bed. The cats were out of the bed. I told Christian I'm lucky I didn't get scratched to death because it was absolutely terrifying. And then same morning I was already kind of awake, but it was around 7 and my smoke detector let out 2 really loud alarms back to back. Like
the same
really
night.
Loud. The same night. Yeah. Just a few hours after this. And then in my like half asleep, I was like, oh, it probably is related to the power outage. No, the smoke detectors are battery operated.
They're battery powered. Because if you lose power, they still have to operate.
Exactly. So, and there's no smoke. I mean, there was nothing. So again, my cats flew.
And it wasn't just the annoying beep to like tell you the battery's low. It was this is the alarm sound. We're testing
and I changed the
alarm.
batteries like maybe 2 months ago. So it definitely was not the battery beep. It was an alarm beep.
That lady's dead sister was trying to tell you something.
Well, I really wish that she'd find a more effective means of communication. Waking me up is not the answer, sis. Wherever you are.
No, maybe that's the best way.
I don't think so.
Which is funny because on Easter, the day that my parents' house was having strange energy, the power went out there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was messing with the AC. And then later we were leaving. My mom very ominously stopped it was dark by then. Stopped in the living room when I was leaving and she looked at me and she pointed at my sister's bedroom down the hallway. And there was a light coming out of her room. And it was a very dim light, so it was just like a lamp. My mom turns to me and very quietly, very stoically said, like, when the power came back on, it turned that light on in your sister's bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
And just held it like that. And I was like, okay.
To clarify, your sister does not live there any longer.
No, I mean, we're all moved out
right
now. But it was so weird.
Yeah, that's super
So a lamp
weird.
Turned on because
they
of the power.
hadn't turned on. I don't know what was going on with the
and
grid,
then your
dude.
vacuum turned on because of the power.
Yeah.
How does that work? I don't get it.
I don't understand either.
If you get
you're an electrician or some sort of...
If you guys get it, tell us how this works.
Please explain.
But now that we're like, a few minutes into this podcast, I am Christian, as you've said, and you're Kaylin.
Yep, I'm Kaylin.
And this is That's Pretty Dark.
This is. If you're looking for something other than this, That's Pretty Dark, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, but we're not talking about, this isn't a home ownership podcast, even though we joke like it is. This is the entertainment podcast that you came to enjoy, and we are on part 2 of The Pagemaster.
Can you imagine if people just like immediately clicked off when you introduced us like that? They're like, this isn't what I was looking for.
Why is this?
Weird.
Is this a haunted home ownership podcast?
April Fool's is come and gone, folks.
Totally is.
Oh, one last thing before we kick off part 2 of The Pagemaster, which I'm so pumped for. We're going to take you through the entire movie and kind of talk through all of the things that we love about the movie. But before we do that, I was going to tell Christian that, as you said, you were at your parents' over Easter. Yep. I also went to my parents' house. And my mom, every time I go to my parents' house lately, she's digging through what was my closet. And so she'll give me like boxes of stuff. So I have a bunch of like notebooks, which is pretty funny actually, like stories I wrote when I was little.
Boxes of like bones.
Some Neopets stuff from, being like 11.
Other skeleton pieces.
10 maybe. And then I found this box that had all of my favorite like toys in it, and I'll show Christian one of the things I brought home now.
Whoa!
I brought it with me. It's a dinosaur. It's a Brontosaurus.
Yeah.
But of course, this was Littlefoot to me. It's not Littlefoot.
Big old long neck.
But it's one of those, and I have it up on my desk now because this toy, when I saw it, it totally. It was one of those reactions where it was like, I know you. Like, I remember you.
Hello,
so I'm putting it on my desk because it reminds me of being imaginative and all the things that, this podcast represents. It's just...
That's amazing. I love that. And it's the right kind of greenish color, too.
Yeah, he's super green and like slime green, so...
That's amazing.
Yeah,
look at that.
So he lives on my desk now.
We'll post a picture of that.
Yeah.
And also, that was your second to last thing, because now I have a thing to say, so this is the last thing.
Okay.
My last thing is, I just got an early birthday gift.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Kaylin today.
He's a week out, by the way. Wish Christian a happy birthday next week.
Wish me a happy birthday if you love me or if you hate me.
It won't be a week out when you're hearing this, so it'll be...
Like 4 days away?
Yeah.
It's next Wednesday, 27th, so... But yeah, so she got me this. I'll post a picture of it too. It was this 2 things really. One is like I don't know how to describe it. It's a Goonies inspired One-Eyed Willie's, I forget, it's like treasure hunting club or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a little, well, it's a pen.
It's like an enamel pin, but it's like a badge.
It's based off of the doubloon or whatever, like the medallion thing is that they have.
Yes.
It's super cool looking. And also this it's a VHS that's sort of been like revamped and redone. There's a light inside of it, and it's that greenish Goosebumps light. I forget the color green.
Yeah, it has a name.
The day glow green color, and it got the green slime coming down. It's super cool. Anyway.
Yeah, they painted it custom.
It's really awesome.
We'll have to shout out the Etsy shop.
Yeah, for sure. Totally.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. And so I'm very appreciative. So thank you.
Of course.
For my
gifts.
And
you're welcome. And thank you for, leaving my roof and roofing my leaves.
I de-leafed your roof.
There you go. That's better. So now that you guys are all caught up on us and our lives, which is what you came here for.
Oh, so I clearly survived the movie that I worked on. I'm
yeah,
home
that's
now.
true too.
This is
Man,
fantastic.
so much is happening.
I know, so much to catch you guys up on.
So much.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Anyway,
Christian's here. He's back. We're better than ever.
Better than ever. Feeling great.
Oh, hey, one
Hi.
more thing.
Hello.
To the listener, to you in your ears right now. Thank you, everybody, for the love that we got on the first Pagemaster episode.
Yeah.
Because we split this into 2 episodes, and
Sure did.
the fact that, so many people really enjoyed Pagemaster and our discussion of it, we really appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
thanks for listening to that, and thanks for letting us know how you felt about it, because it was really cool to get that feedback.
Thanks for liking Pagemaster more than the Goonies.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but the Goonies, also Pagemaster, I don't know if it has to do with like the timeline, but I feel like, a lot of people our age maybe saw Pagemaster that didn't see the Goonies.
You've been singing that song for weeks. I don't think a lot of people saw the Goonies.
I
don't think a lot of people
because I didn't
saw
see the Goonies until I was older.
Well, that's
but,
true.
It's still dope. I mean, I'm glad I did now,
Sure.
I'm glad we talked
Sure.
about
No.
it.
No, it's fine. No, Pagemaster love. I get it.
We love Pagemaster, and we are here for number 2.
They just prefer Kaylin's episodes. That's fine.
No, no, we've done polls. People like your series.
Hey, this is your first series, and you're doing great so far. So good job.
Whoa.
Hell
okay,
yeah.
guys, you gotta really hype me up for this second episode.
Yeah. Hype her up.
Match the energy of the first one, if not more. That'd be great. Thank you.
Hype her up, folks.
Yeah, so we're excited to get back into the Pagemaster. I think we left you off like right as we were transitioning into the world of the animation.
Because we're at the library.
Mm-hmm.
He's slipped down. He's hit his head. The ceiling begins to melt. All the paint comes
Yes.
down, right? And it chases
right.
him around.
Gobbles him up. And
Gobbles him up.
Transition.
Just like Simba, that bastard.
Hey. So at this point, everything is animated, and like Richie wakes up and he says that he's a cartoon. And this was such a powerful moment for me as a kid, I remember.
Yeah.
Because the Pagemaster corrects him immediately and tells him, "You are an illustration."
Right.
And I am the Pagemaster. Like he redirects that whole, you're not a cartoon on like it's, I think cartoons are cool and fine, and TV is cool and fine.
Yeah.
And, they're like, but they clearly intended to say that books are superior, and
yes.
we are
You're
in
not
a
TV,
book.
you're a book.
You're not, exactly. That's the distinction that we're making here. And I do think it was valuable for the film.
Oh, yeah.
And the Pagemaster kind of tells him that he's supposed to complete a series of tests and trials like every other story ever on Earth.
You must
ever.
face 3 tests: horror, adventure, and fantasy.
Right.
And as we progress through the story, we encounter references to all these literary classics, which, like I said, were public domain at this point. And we meet our sidekicks for the movie. So we have books that come out of the woodwork named Adventure and Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And we get some fun banter between the 2 of them as books.
Right.
And we also have our Little Mermaid reference really early on, as soon as fantasy is introduced. And she has to hike up her pantyhose, and she's like, gotta straighten out my Little Mermaid underwear or whatever it is. And watching it now made me think, like, why do you have to talk about the lady's underwear? She's the first female character. Well, there's the mom and the little girls that laughed at him. But, like, she's the first female character they're introducing, and one of the first things she says is about her underwear.
Right.
Like, this one's not going to win any Bechdel test.
No. It was, like,
awards,
instantaneous.
Like, instant. I don't know if I would call it objectification necessarily, but still, why was that like the first thing out of her mouth?
It threw me off too. Why are we talking about anyone's underwear in a children's movie?
But I also think that they wanted to make the Little Mermaid reference too. So it was a joke, obviously, but
Yeah.
looking at this again through the 2022 eyes, it's not as great.
And to be fair, though, Adventure, one of the first things that happens with him before we meet Fantasy, his belt falls down and he says, "Oh, I'm naked."
That is also true. You're
so
right.
I think like they were banking on that humor resonating with children at the time.
Like your pants fall down. That's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. Panties is a funny word, you know? It's like, I don't know, but it was still weird.
Yeah, it felt weird. You're right. I
To
didn't
make either
include
of those
that in my notes,
references,
but
that
to make
was
either
weird.
of those references, it was odd.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But yeah, it was, I guess, meant to get like a cheap laugh from
kids
in the 90s.
And there was adult humor in this too.
Oh, sure.
But
you get this banter between adventure and fantasy, and if you watch that like behind the scenes of the Pagemaster, Whoopi Goldberg and Sir Patrick Stewart recorded a lot of their dialogue together.
Good.
So you can feel that in the movie. They were together, they were riffing off of each other.
Yeah.
Like some other like things that we've talked about. They were together in the booth and it carried through into the chemistry of the movie.
Right.
But as they're moving through, one of the quotes that I liked, Adventure says,
"But this is a library, mate. Not everything's as it seems."
I wrote that down too. Yeah.
Oh, it's just so good.
God, I loved that.
There are these little moments, these little, like, everything may not blend together perfectly and it may not be perfectly written, but there are like some powerful statements that they make that I personally really like.
There were some really good little one-liners for sure.
And we also get a glimpse of some of the horror that is around the corner for us because Adventure opens The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And the hound that comes out of the book, he is snarling and slobbering and absolutely terrifying.
I was going to say, because I just edited our Hungry Hounds episode from Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
You referenced the Hound of the Baskervilles.
I do. And it's scary.
It's very scary.
Very scary. And they animate it as very, very scary. And so, like, you know, it pops out of the book and I'm like, what are you doing? We want kids to read books. That's the point of this. And that's real scary. That's not the way to do it. So as we progress,
It was for me as a kid.
It was for you. You wanted it to be that scary.
I would have been like, whoa, that's in a book? Where is that? How can I find that? Yeah.
I guess then it did what it was supposed to do.
Everybody has their own thing that they like.
Richard Tyler, I'm Afraid of Everything. But I read Nancy Drew, you know, I was reading mysteries and things that were scary.
I sought out fear.
And I mean, I still do to an extent, but
yeah.
So as I was watching this back, as I was, you know, researching, I'd forgotten that the horror section is first, but obviously, of course it is, because we need to meet our third sidekick, which is horror. But I was like, whoa, we're already here. Like, this happened so fast.
Yeah,
and
it feels like the biggest.
It does. But as you approach the mansion, the haunted mansion, if you will, there's a grave for Jacob Marley, which I think is so great.
Yes.
Reference to A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
And we meet this poor, dopey hunchbook, they call him, horror. And he explains that horror always has sad endings. And he's so sad and just sweet. And I love him and my heart breaks. And it broke when I was a kid and it breaks now.
He's the best.
And Krishner actually said in one of the interviews in the behind the scenes stuff, he said that horror's father was an encyclopedia and his mother was a paperback. So he has a broken spine.
Wow.
And he always feels misshelved.
Wow.
And his only dream is to end up in a section with happy endings.
It's amazing.
So good. Like,
the number
it's just
of puns
so good.
from the writing and from that.
Exactly. Yes. The puns of books and library. It's so good.
It's incredible.
And I mean, you can even reach into that further because I started to think like, okay, his dad's an encyclopedia. Like, there's all this knowledge, the weight of information, the weight of knowledge, and how that plays into horror is such, like...
And the pressure.
So is that another reason why his spine is broken and heavy? Everything's heavy to carry. I thought that was, I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could take it. I'm probably reaching. It's a kid's movie, but... So we enter this haunted house, and as a kid, I was always beside myself because as much as I do love this scene, and everything that it represents now, it totally terrified me as a kid.
As Adventure says, it's just a house.
It's just a house.
Which I think is a Hill House reference.
Oh, I'd like to think of it that way too.
But it's not, is it?
It's not.
Never is.
Oh, it never is. but there's this like green hue on everything.
Mm.
And of course, a raven flies down and says, "Nevermore."
Oh my God, that moment. I think you've told me about that raven
I probably
before.
have. Because
When I heard it, it gave me chills.
It was so good. I didn't take note of who did the raven voice. It was probably Frank, to be honest.
I looked up all the cast, but I didn't see anything that said raven.
Yeah, probably not credited.
Nothing.
Wow. And there's this fireplace and all these beakers and chemicals.
Cylinders, beakers, loop-de-loops.
Dr. Jekyll comes in and he is being too nice. Like we've talked about how just unsettling that is because he's
Can I help
so
you?
reserved. Leonard Nimoy.
Mhm.
And I loved the quote, like his quote as well. "In this very room, waiting to strike are forces of evil."
Yes.
And that's probably a quote from, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But
I've read it, but I didn't remember the quote.
yeah.
That story means a lot to me, but it has been a long time since I've read it.
Oh, I haven't read it since high school, I don't think.
Yeah.
But as he says it, I'm, of course, over here as a kid, too. Like, yeah, we know you, dude. Like, you're the forces of evil.
you creep.
It's you.
Yeah.
So at this point, Dr. Jekyll offers the underage child a drink.
Yeah, no, he totally
And-
offers a drink to these characters. I was like, holy
does.
shit, dude.
He totally does.
This is the
And-
overly nice adult offering a
Yes.
child
Offering
something
a child
very mature.
a drink to drug them? Like, it's so dark.
Oh my God. And also, it's enough to melt through the floor.
That's what I was about to say.
so
He's
toxic.
mixing this, like, caustic
God.
martini.
And horror's like,
And-
can I have the olive? As it,
It gets knocked out of his hand.
yeah, spills.
Oh, it spills everywhere.
Green slime everywhere.
And to be honest, I have always associated alcohol with this scene.
Yeah?
Forever, always in my life, always. Anytime I see alcohol, drink alcohol, hear of alcohol, I imagine this martini.
That makes sense.
And Dr. Jekyll taking his big glug, glug, glug. It's very dark. We get this like shadowy picture of him drinking the poison.
Yeah.
And then there's this change in the light, and he's like stumbling around, almost limping, like he can't keep it together, and all these like strange guttural noises that he's making. And then he laughs, this cackle, maniacal laugh, and he stumbles over and he has his hands over his face. And it's at this point, for a lot of my life watching this movie, I had to close my eyes because the face scared me so much.
Yeah.
But he uncovers his face, and at the camera, he says, "My name is Mr. Hyde."
He looks like the animated monkey component of the gorillas.
Yes, he does. That is a great
Except
note.
very demonic version
A
of
demonic
the gorillas
version
band.
of, yes,
Yes.
that is nailing it.
He looks
That's
just like
totally
that.
it. I've, like, when I was younger watching, like, seeing music videos like the Gorillaz, I had that, like, association and was, like, turned off. I mean, I like the music, but I was turned off by that because I associated it with that scene.
It was shocking to watch.
It's shocking. That's what it is. It's shocking. It scares me
His
so
eyes.
much. I can watch it now. I'm fine. Don't worry.
I mean,
But, like,
we're not scared of these things, but they do ring a certain bell deep inside of us.
well, it's the uncanny valley still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's in it, the image, you've got the sharp teeth, you've got the glowing red eyes.
The hair is crazy.
And you're watching a human become unhinged. You're watching a human who was just normal and whatever. You're watching him snap in a second.
It goes from polite society to very, very impolite
Yes.
society.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse about the uncanny valley, but I tried to get a little more specific because I really wanted to understand why this was so unsettling. I think you're right on part of it being so shocking
Mhm.
because it's a reveal. It's something that's sudden and it's in your face, and nothing else really like that has happened yet in this movie. So
Yeah.
like, they don't address the camera, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I mean, in most movies they don't address the camera, but like this almost breaks the fourth wall because suddenly your perspective is the character's perspective.
Mhm.
And he's in your face.
He does
And so
look
it's
directly
very-
into the quote unquote camera.
Yeah. It's like he's looking at you. It's a lot.
Which was a conscious decision by the filmmakers.
Exactly.
animators.
Because that's scarier. It's so much scarier when you lock eyes with the thing
Mhm.
versus just, if you'd been watching that from a third person perspective, like we are watching the majority of that scene,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have done that to me, I don't think.
Right.
But now there's this thing looking at you. And so as like a 4 or 5 year old kid, me watching this, so heavy, like just So scary.
So scary. I know.
And I tried to dig into some of that uncanny valley stuff, and it's similar to what I talked about, I think, when we discussed All Dogs. Kind of, we can't help but indulge in, watch, repeat these scary situations because we're trying to prevent a problem, we're trying to prevent tragedy. And it's similar to that because we have this natural avoidance of the uncanny valley, because if a thing is almost human, our brains can identify in seconds that it's almost human, but it isn't.
Right.
And then our brains start working on why isn't it? And some of the most logical conclusions that you can come to in that line of questioning: is it dead?
Mm-hmm.
Is it diseased?
What's wrong? It's wrong.
What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
Is it trying to deceive me? Because
yes.
it's trying to be a human when I know it isn't?
The logic behind why is scary.
Exactly.
What's its purpose?
Obviously, it's like the result of millennia of humans interacting with their surroundings and literally imprinting on our psyche as we've evolved as a species to avoid death.
Yeah.
We all have some level of apprehension about the darkness or the dark that's around us because our ancestors, there were predators in the dark. That's where they are.
Always.
So you have to be afraid of the dark. You have to be on your toes. You have to at least have apprehension toward that, or you're not going to make it. So only the people, only the gene pool that was aware of this was able to even reproduce, to live long enough to reproduce. And then there's other things, not just the darkness, but other things that trigger that same aversion, like snakes, spiders.
It's incredible how quickly you can die in nature.
Yeah, it's true.
If you don't know what you're doing.
But we still have these like echoes of fear. And that's kind of what I was getting at, is like there's these echoes of things that kept our ancestors safe that we've evolved past need for. So it's like we don't need to be afraid of the dark. Most of the time the things in the dark are not going to be threatening to us in the way they were to our ancestors. Also, we have light bulbs. Like we don't need that fear in the same way that our ancestors did.
Yeah.
And then obviously this creature, it has all these predatory qualities, like I mentioned, with the eyes that are glowing in the dark, and you've got the sharp teeth. These are predatory tools that humans are predisposed to fear, be afraid of, and run from, because they could very easily mean the end of us.
Yeah. But we are designed in our evolution to be afraid of this sort of visual, this sort of thing.
Exactly.
It seeks you out in the darkness. It can find you.
Exactly. And for a kid in the 90s, that's just it's just monkey brain. We just have this like visceral, this is scary. It doesn't matter why it's scary. I just know that it is.
It's scary now. Yeah.
And
for sure.
It's even scary now. It's hard to look at. It's like that, the internet thing, the Japanese Momo, when her picture was going around a couple years ago.
Oh my God.
It's a lot like that, because you automatically want to avert your eyes. You automatically want to get away from it, whatever it is. And it's a similar thing. That's a very uncanny valley thing, because you can look at it in an instant and know that it's not right.
Exactly.
You internally can't help but want to avoid that.
Yeah, it triggers fear on a level that we don't consciously understand.
And it's pretty funny in that vein, because I read that I've been trying to talk about, I keep getting tied up in my notes. I read this article that talked about the evolution of what you're afraid of. So it's like, here's what evolution made you afraid of, but here's what might actually kill you. And it was really funny in comparison, because it was like, I'll just spoil it for you, but motor vehicles and sugar and alcohol and cigarettes and your partner and climate change are all very much more threatening statistically to us physically than animals, corpses, strangers, other short-term threats that immediately activate our nervous system.
Yeah.
Climate change doesn't immediately activate our nervous system. So a lot of things do a much better job of causing fear that's immediate.
Because fear isn't bad.
No, it's necessary for survival.
Fear is very healthy.
I looked everywhere trying to find it for this episode, because there's this article that I read that mentioned the uncanny valley or had some type of tie to it like a decade ago, like a long time ago, probably in college. But the essence of the article, or like a quote from it at the end, I still remember reading it and just getting full body chills.
Oh, nice.
Because it was like, what happened to my ancestor all those years ago that put this in my head that I can't even identify? Like, what terror, like echoes through the generations.
Now it's the thing in the closet, but it used to be a man-eater.
Yes, exactly.
A very real, present fear.
I read even articles for this as well that were talking about how, evolving, living in cities now, a lot of those fears are irrelevant or we don't need them as much as we once did.
Yeah.
So we started to almost create monsters, fictional monsters, to fill those gaps because evolutionarily, it was still so strong that we needed to create reasons. Why we felt that way.
I love the existence versus the creation of monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Man. So much. Big nightmares.
Nightmare, big. Not just dream big, but...
Big nightmares.
Okay, so then, the chandelier falls. It pulls Hyde into the floor.
Yes.
And you look down and you see him, and I can close my eyes and see this frame as well. And if you know this movie, you probably can too, listener.
The candle falls.
Oh my god. Yeah, the candle falls into the darkness, and Horror, the book, is tied up, stuck in this chandelier chain, whatever.
Well, these chains, these Marley these Jacob
chains,
Marley chains.
Right?
Yep.
And at the same time, he starts shouting, "Sanctuary, sanctuary!"
Sanctuary!
Which is, Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's a Quasimodo quote.
The number of references is astounding in this movie.
It is. Oh, so Hyde is still laughing maniacally, but he kind of falls down into the darkness. And everybody, we make a break for it, and we're deliberating whether we go upstairs or downstairs, and we look at the downstairs, and there's this flashing red light.
The hellfire.
And a dark laughter. And obviously, I inherently, as we've discussed over the episodes, but inherently I knew that was hell.
Yep.
And that must be where that goes. And so they're like, up, we go up. And I'm like, you better go up.
I'm thinking in the literary aspect of this, that reference must have been Dante's Inferno.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because I can't think of hell depicted in any other classic literature.
Classic lit.
But then again, maybe not. Maybe it was just hella scary.
I mean, hey, it was enough for me.
For sure.
And
for sure.
They recede through these hallways of shelves, reminding you, obviously, they're still in the library in the grand scheme of things.
Stories, yeah.
And all of these ghost stories, they say, are swirling around them. So Haunted Mansion. This didn't scare me as much as a kid, and I love it now.
All ghost stories, of course.
Ghost stories. And so it's all these wisps and ideas of stories that are ghosts that are just kind of haunting them.
And there was one guy that did all the voices for the ghosts.
Yeah, he was spooky.
Spooky guy.
They nailed it, in my opinion, in that part. So I love the way that the story kind of begins to happen to them, because if a lot of people online say that they're bothered by this because of the story structure, they don't feel like it's strong enough. But to me, I interpret that as imagination, and it's almost just kind of as if they're discovering or happening upon the next element, and it feels like a kid's imagination. It feels as if a kid is driving this, like we talked about with Hey Arnold before. Mm-hmm. When you have a child narrator or a child perpetuating the story, I think it's cool. I think it lends itself to the way that a child experiences or tells stories. And so they're kind of... they go through these ghost stories, and then they see the exit shimmering, shining in the distance over the water.
Right.
And it again reminds us we're in the library, and the producers talk about the importance of the library in this movie and how it's almost a character because it grounds us and it reminds us of the objective, and it's almost a boundary. It's like you feel a little bit safer because this is all technically happening in the confines of the library, even though everything's out to get him, and there's so much peril, and there's so many opportunities for misfortune. It's all happening in this universe of the library.
Right.
And I think it's cool, and I appreciate that they kind of remind you of that. They give you those glimpses so you know where you are.
Yeah, I get that. It's still safe.
It's still safe. There's still safety. There's still structure here. There's still a structure. We're just playing within the structure.
Right.
And that's how kids learn. That's how kids grow. And so I think it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
But the next segment kind of mixes and matches some adventure titles, like classic adventure stories. They sail off toward the exit, and they meet on the water Captain Ahab.
It's Captain Ahab, it is.
Who is obviously searching for Moby Dick. And he is also unhinged in his own way, in a way that I didn't remember. I didn't remember him being as frightening as he is. But there's
he's possessed.
Yeah. There's a psychological darkness to him that even as a child, you can feel. there's this hue of red, and everything is just real scary again. And it made me think that it was rather bold of the filmmakers to put both of these really disturbing moments pretty early on in the film, like relatively speaking. We're really closer to halfway at this point, but it's like,
Yeah.
you're putting that right up front, and you're just hoping that kids will stick it out. Like, you're hoping that you'll get through it, and I'm sure there are many kids that didn't, but maybe they've gone back since then,
Right.
which is kind of funny to think about as well. But they kind of, I think, anticipated that we would walk into the darkness, because everything around us was darkness. All of the media, everything, this hue, everything that was cast across what we watched, we had shown them. I say we, really it was, millennials that are just slightly older than me. But we were fearlessly walking into this stuff, and we wanted to be there. And then we came along and did the same thing with Are You Afraid of the Dark and all these other things. So it's like, we didn't shy away from it. So their target demographic, any focus group probably, was telling them, go ahead. So it kind of goes against what you would expect from a kid, but our generation was different, I feel like.
Maybe.
And we wanted it, and we looked for it.
We were also primed and ready from like Pinocchio.
Yeah, Pinocchio, Dumbo,
Yeah.
everything.
We were just used to this peril.
Yeah,
This idea of something larger than us that can literally eat us.
yeah,
I don't know. We were just kind of used to it,
man.
I feel like,
Yeah,
in these
it's-
cartoons.
Yeah, and but they run with it. They take it and they run with it in the Pagemaster.
Yeah.
At this point, we've been separated from fantasy and horror. Richie's on the raft with Adventure, and he's lamenting that you guys are the only friends I've ever had. And it's this, like, the climax of the story, sort of, where they're kind of apart from each other. And we got there really fast. I was like, oh, wow, we're already here. Okay. And they spot these sharks that are coming toward the raft.
Oof.
Then there's another boat that's approaching. And Adventure reminds us and Richie that he should be careful, mate, because not all sharks are in the water.
Yeah. That was a quote I wrote down too.
Such a good one. And we see the Jolly Roger flag fly from the mast of this ship that's approaching.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet pirate Long John Silver.
John Silver.
He's voiced by Jim Cummings, aka Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Tasmanian Devil. He's Scar's singing voice for part of The Lion King. He is the voice of Pete for a lot of the Disney animated shorts. He's Rasputin's singing voice in Anastasia.
Wow.
He's done so much. I also learned randomly in researching for this that he also designed Mardi Gras floats very early in his life. He moved to New Orleans to design Mardi Gras
No
floats.
way, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
wild. But we find ourselves, they're on the boat. One of the scarier lines that the internet says comes from this movie. Some of his lackeys, some of the pirates with Long John Silver, ask if he wants them to show him the color of his insides, him being Richie,
Right.
with the knife held to his neck. And
They're
it's
red.
like, they're red.
They're red.
I mean, that's pretty dark. That's a very violent thing.
That's
to,
pretty
to
dark.
say
I
in a
remember
kids'
thinking
movie.
the same thing watching it. Yeah, I was like, geez.
Yeah.
Good grief.
And
I don't know when the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction existed.
early.
Early what?
Like Disneyland.
Like
Oh, I'll tell you.
early 20th century?
Like 50s.
Mid-century?
Yeah, March 18th, 1967
Okay. I just loved
in Disneyland.
the, fumbling, bumbling pirate sort of characters, the
Me
dialect,
too. It felt
the
so...
voices. It
I
felt
don't know
so
how I felt like I
pirates.
knew it. I knew
Yeah,
it so
was
well.
so familiar to me.
Obviously, Peter Pan also is very
Yes,
heavy in
yes,
the pirate culture. You got the peg legs and the eye patches and the parrots. Like, everybody knows what a pirate is, even though I'm sure that probably was nothing like what pirates actually were like
Right.
in life.
Right.
But we have this caricature or this stereotype of a pirate.
Yeah. It's so
And
funny.
it's very common. And you think of adventure, I thought of Disney, admittedly, a lot watching this movie because the Magic Kingdom is divided into segments that very closely resemble this. You've got Adventureland, Fantasyland. We don't have Horrorland necessarily, but we have Liberty Square. We have a Haunted Mansion. We have turn of the
But
century,
it's like very colonial
colonial.
America.
Exactly.
So it's that old kind of like, saloons mixed with haunted houses.
Sure.
Mixed
It's the
with,
Wild
like,
West and
founding fathers type.
So you kind of do have a lot of these elements in the Magic Kingdom park.
Yeah.
Because these are classic story elements. These are the elements of fiction that we all grew up on.
Fiction A to Z.
Yeah, you get a little bit of everything doing it this way.
Yeah.
And speaking of a little bit of everything, we go from, meeting Long John Silver, we find ourselves on Treasure Island.
Great book.
And we even get Gulliver's Travels.
I know.
When they kidnap Horror and tie him down. That's like a common trope in cartoons. I didn't realize how many cartoons actually reference that. Because I knew it as a kid, but I don't know if kids today would know what Gulliver's Travels is.
Probably not today.
I don't know if they're still reading it in
But
schools.
then it was done a lot.
A lot. Often.
Yep.
Very often. But we're eventually reunited with the other books, obviously. And Adventure snaps at Horror. They have a little bit of a tiff. And Horror's such a poor little broken spine. It just breaks my heart now because Horror's just so precious.
Broken spine.
And I love him. But also watching it back, I'm jealous of all of the stories that Adventure gets. There are so many references that Adventure gets. And I wish that we got more horror references because we got some.
A few, yeah.
But I wish that we'd gotten to explore more horror stories. I will say, and I'm kind of speaking out of order here anyway, but there was apparently a deleted scene where we see Frankenstein's monster continue the fight that had started and kind of kidnap Richie.
That would make sense.
To the point where Frankenstein's monster is actually featured in the poster for the film.
What?
But the deleted scene, the scene was cut. Ultimately,
that would have made this hour 15 movie into a full hour 25.
I know. I don't know why they made the decision to cut that.
Why would you cut that?
That was considered too scary, and that was kind of my thought. I was like, okay,
that is scary.
Horror got one storyline,
yeah,
and then you give Adventure more, and you give Fantasy more, and maybe that's about the way of balancing it.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know, but I was disappointed when I realized. But you can still see glimpses.
Yeah, the horror element is short.
It
comparatively.
is, and you can still see glimpses of Frankenstein's monster in a lot of the advertisements for it. Like if you have old VHS tapes that advertise Pagemaster, because they started advertising this movie 3 years before it came out. Pretty much as soon as they were animating it, they started to put out ads to try and build that buzz.
Yikes.
So you can still see elements of it in different places.
So did they just never animate that stuff, or
I think
did they animate it and it was just cut?
I don't actually know. I think that there were at least parts of it were animated because it appears.
I want to
some
see a
places,
full director's
but I don't know
cut.
if they finished it before they made it. I don't know if they animated it before they made the decision to cut it. I don't know.
Man, that'd been cool.
I know. I wish it were there. Now, it's time for fantasy. So when we transition into the fantasy world,
I'm fantasy. I'm fantasy.
I'm fantasy. So we see this fantasy world. It's
very Disney, very Black Cauldron fantasy.
Yeah, and we get this beautiful song.
I know. It's so random. You know what I thought? I was thinking the whole time, I would love to hear a modern version of this song performed by Tillian Pearson from Dance Gavin Dance. It would be so beautiful.
I would love that.
Because his voice is so pitch perfect. His register is so high. It would be just the clearest version of this song, but so hardcore and fucking awesome.
Yeah, I would be into that.
You should do it. Hey, Tillian.
I'd be very into that.
Cover this song.
Hey, listen to us.
Pay you money.
It's shockingly as beautiful as this song is. It's called Whatever You Imagine.
Yeah.
It is the most perfect slice of 90s nostalgia.
It's so Disney.
It's even more than Disney to me. It's fiction. It's 90s fiction. It's me as a little kid.
Yeah. It's
There's
good.
just nothing better. It's so good. It shockingly is not the theme of the film, however. The theme of the film, the credit song, is Dream Away by Babyface.
Babyface.
But Whatever You Imagine, perfect to me. We get this incredible infusion of nostalgia.
So good.
And we see all kinds of references to fantasy titles. We see Mother Goose. We see Humpty Dumpty.
Mm-hmm.
We see fairies that probably represent Peter Pan or the earlier Fantasia.
Very Fantasia.
There are several things that it could be.
Again, so much of this movie is so Fantasia to me.
Mm-hmm.
The inexplicable blending of concepts and elements and visuals.
Right.
Into very there's no structure. It's just
anthology.
Hodgepodge.
You've got all this together that doesn't belong together.
It's really amazing. It's astounding.
And I will also say that the fairies bear a striking resemblance to the fairies of Fern Gully as well.
Yes.
completely. Of course, Ferngully came out a little bit earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but still, I wouldn't be shocked to learn that there were animators on both of those, because they all apparently were the same people.
Small world.
Of course, we've also got a fire-breathing dragon, and in order to attempt to save us from that dragon, we get references to Arabian Nights, where fantasy tells Horror to look up page 1001 or whatever,
1001
and
Nights.
finds Arabian Nights, and she casts a spell on it with her wand, and it becomes a magic carpet.
Yep.
And of course, we as children are very familiar with the magic carpet because Aladdin had just come out in 1992, so made perfect sense. And we also get an Alice in Wonderland reference a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally really loved that they included this element of romance because we get a moment between fantasy and adventure, the books.
Yeah.
And they have a little kiss, which is sweet. And then Adventure says, Adventure says,
How would you like to curl up with a good book?
and she doesn't let him get away with it. She like kicks him to the
And
curb.
she's like, no, but I'm like, yes, please.
Me
That's
too.
all
I'm
I
like,
want
can I curl up with a
every
good
single
book?
day of my life, please.
I thought it was really, really clever. And of course, they did make a distinct decision not to really have a lot of romance in this movie.
I mean, good. Yeah.
Which
there shouldn't be.
But it's different because there were other kids' movies at the time that did. So they kind of stepped out of that.
Because he continues to try to keep getting kisses out of her, and she's just kind of like,
yeah.
You know.
Which is, hey, not cool. Consent is cool. We like consent, kids.
No, she was all about the kiss.
She
just
was.
nothing past a kiss.
Sure, and that's fine. That's okay. She consented to a kiss, but nothing more.
Consent is cool.
Consent is more than cool. Consent is necessary.
But caring is creepy.
Caring is creepy.
The Shins.
Yeah, the Shins. That is a good song.
Yeah.
And I also don't agree. I don't think caring is creepy.
No, caring is
Caring is cool too. Kindness is cool, all that stuff. But at one point in this segment,
We've covered our bases.
Richie is buried under this pile of books, and he's like struggling to lift it off of him. And he literally shrugs off the book Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
Do you know Atlas Shrugged?
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that the joke was just the irony of the title.
The shrug, yeah.
To shrug. You shrug something, and it's funny. It's a book from the 50s. Ayn Rand was all about individualism. And
it's a very controversial text.
It is. But because she basically argued that the world is best served when one acts entirely out of his own self-interest. And
I know it's referenced a lot in Mad Men.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it argues that altruism can be destructive. And it's the total flip the script on what's good for society.
Right.
It's interesting. I don't know.
It questions a lot.
It raises questions. It questions the government, which obviously people didn't like at the time.
Agendas.
Now it's kind of like, well, let's think about some of this.
Maybe.
There could be some shreds of truth in here. Never know. But I thought it was pretty funny. Atlas Shrugged. And then I'm like, well, do you connect it to Richie like coming into his own power and like finally thinking for himself?
The individual power.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I doubt that they would go that far as to try and tie in Atlas Shrugged, other than the fact that it says shrugged and he shrugs it off.
I'm sure it was a very soft kind of pun.
Right. Pun-ish joke.
Non-verbalized humor.
So did anybody else get flashbacks to All Dogs when Richie is eaten by the dragon? And he goes into his stomach, and there's this bubbling magma stomach acid.
Oh, yeah.
And there's books everywhere, but there's bones and the things that have been eaten by this dragon. To me, it looked like hell in All Dogs. It was
really
not
did.
nearly as threatening
red,
to me, but still.
A lake of fire, kind of.
Yes, you get that vibe.
I really appreciated the allegory of when he's swallowed by the dragon, you mostly see just a ton of books.
Yes.
It's almost like the dragon represents people who don't support reading or don't support certain
Maybe they're getting rid of the books, like eating the books.
Yes. It's
swallowing
like
the books.
If you look at all the symbolism and all the logic behind this story, this narrative, you've got the books who are characters. You have the kid who has the library card. He's their ticket out of the library.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have human characters who represent characters of stories. Jekyll and Hyde,
Mm-hmm.
Moby Dick, Treasure Island, and now you have this dragon who is the book-eating, story-eating, multi-universe consuming entity that is trying to eat all of these classic, books and narratives.
Burn down the library.
It's like the dragon is eating the library. He's eating everything.
It's a threat to the library.
It's a threat to the library. It's a threat to intelligence and education and enlightenment.
I like that.
And it's like he has to defeat ignorance. The dragon represents ignorance.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
I can see that.
And so we have
for sure.
we all have to defeat the dragon that is book banning currently.
We're going to keep hammering until you get it.
They ban books. They may as well be eating the books and destroying them, book burning.
Well, they do. They burn them.
So it's like all this
Tragic.
metaphor and symbolism is thrown into this dragon that's consuming. He's a world eater.
Representing fantasy.
Exactly.
Ironically, that's what's so ironic about it, is that he is within the story himself and he doesn't even know it. And I think that's true of the same ignorant people, the same idea that whether or not you appreciate these books or what they are, what they represent, whether or not you appreciate fiction at all or storytelling at all, you exist in some capacity because of it. It's so before you, it's so after you. It's more than you are or ever will be.
You
will never consume this. You are a product of this.
Yeah.
It's just the way the world works. It's the way that society works. There will always be a narrative. There will always be stories. There always have been.
Right. So, okay, the point I hear you making now is that eventually the dragon will ultimately consume itself, right? Because if we're consuming knowledge,
right? Well,
at this rate,
you're not necessarily consuming knowledge; you're destroying in this analogy.
In this analogy, right? So we're destroying knowledge, but the dragon itself is consuming because he's
eating it.
That's kind of cool though. Because he doesn't know his fate. He doesn't know his own fate.
He has no idea, which I feel like represents a lot of,
his or her fate.
His or her fate, kind of like, or their fate. Kind of like a lot of, people that exist in those worlds. They don't quite know what they're doing to themselves until they've already done it. And I feel like I can say that having come from a similar background. I don't feel like my parents were like book burning types, but you know what I mean? I feel like they just weren't.
Like, give them the opportunity.
The world that we were in was not pro secular knowledge necessarily.
Right.
So I feel like I can say that having been reformed. No offense to anyone.
So
just, wake up, that kind of thing.
Wake up. Stop destroying things. Because if you destroy enough things, eventually you destroy
yourself.
Wow.
It's like Boy Meets World. Lose one friend, lose all friends. Lose yourself.
Very deep.
Me and my Boy Meets World.
So philosophy. Much thought process.
Very little, honestly. It doesn't take much to get me to an Eric Matthews point of view.
I've noticed. It's fine. No problems with that. No qualms.
Knowledge is power.
A little more knowledge a day.
Dragons away.
We're going to keep the dragons away. We're going to keep hammering this home.
I like it. I do appreciate it. So help me carry this analogy through.
Okay.
Because at this point,
I've hijacked the whole thing.
No, I think it's great. I think that's so relevant. It's so relevant to right now. It's relevant to always. The ignorant, like my enemy is ignorance.
We are against ignorance.
You'd think that eventually the buck would stop.
It will not, unless we do something about it.
Exactly. So in the stomach of the dragon, he's looking for an answer, looking for a way out, and he turns to the books because when you need
the books,
there you go. When you need help, you need inspiration, you need knowledge, you need
when you don't know what else to do,
you turn to the books. And I think that's such a cool message. So he finds Jack and the Beanstalk, opens it up. Of course, the beanstalk grows, and he's able to ride the beanstalk up and out of the dragon, which is kind of gross in my opinion.
It was so nasty.
But he rides it up through his throat.
Like his entire ecosystem in his stomach. Like it's like
I mean, yeah. That's a common trope, I feel like, in just cartoons, You get eaten and you go down in one bite and you're just down there with everything else that it's eaten in one bite.
Whoa.
The beanstalk grows and they make their way to the exit. And once they get to the exit, finally, they're all there. They made it. And they're intercepted by the Pagemaster, and he's congratulating them and telling them they did a good job. Like you've you've won, essentially. You won
Yeah.
the game, you beat the trials, you made it out to the other side.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I'd brought you here with a turn of the page?
Right.
So if I just gave it to you, you wouldn't appreciate it, which there's a lot of philosophy that you could say or think behind that. I don't know. But
No,
his point is,
I appreciated it.
sure, in this context, it's very much you had to learn these lessons, you had to have these experiences, or you wouldn't be who you are today. And I think we can all appreciate and understand and agree with that on a certain level. I know I wouldn't be who I am without, difficult things that I've been through. And I think everybody could say the same.
Because we're kids and we don't know what we need.
Mm-mm.
I wish I had someone like him in my life telling me exactly what I need.
You need a Pagemaster.
Can he be my life coach, please?
He'd make a pretty good life coach, probably.
I would do it.
Forget the fact that he just put this child through severe trauma and near-death experiences.
No.
I think it's all happening within the context of a library. You have to kind of
He was always
suspend
safe.
your disbelief in that and assume that he's always safe.
He was always
You
safe.
gave him safe place to explore, learn, grow, create, think. So I think that's true. And he's faced his fears, he's gained these skills, he's gained confidence, and he's found friendship in these books, which is so nice.
Friendship
I also
and non-human things. They're
right. He didn't
anthropomorphized
actually make
books.
friends with
They're not
humans.
actual friends. They're books. But
I
I also
understand.
appreciate that.
Same, because that was me in a lot of cases.
Look, I'd rather cozy up literally any night with a book than with a friend.
Yeah.
I don't need a friend
Yes.
in my arms. I need a book in my arms.
That's right.
If you're
Me
my
too.
friend and you're at my house, be at least on the other side of the couch, please.
Yeah, get on over there.
But with a book, you can be literally in my armpit. I wouldn't care.
Your armpit. I don't think the books want to be in your armpit either.
The books
just by
can't
the way.
think. They have no preferences.
Are
They
you
don't care
sure?
where they are.
But horror resonated with you so much, you had to believe that your books were alive to an
I
extent.
anthropomorphize most things in my life.
You do, but not books.
Not my books.
You do. I've noticed. You as a person, you anthropomorphize things more often than almost anybody else I know.
It's tragic.
It's not tragic. I think it's charming.
Do you think I'm mentally ill?
No. I mean, yes, but no.
Because I'm trying to convince my therapist I'm mentally ill. But she's like, no, you're fine. You're totally fine.
I do think it's charming in a way because you speak to things as if they are people very, very often. And it's very easy to I do the same thing, but I think you do it to another level.
I watched Beauty and the Beast as a kid.
Exactly.
I know my candles are real.
Your candles are real? Do you call them Lumiere?
No, I call them...
Buzz. Buzz is yelling. Buzz says, wow. Buddy.
You just anthropomorphized your cat. So...
Hey, he's living, breathing thing.
So are my cats. And my candles.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm almost done.
Almost.
Oh, he cries. Okay. So I also have a note to just point out because I noticed it all through my childhood. So why not just mention it?
Yeah.
I feel like they have lipstick on Macaulay Culkin. I assume they do. They probably
I
do.
didn't notice this.
His lips are so red and bright red.
Once he comes back into his body, his real human.
Yes, but also even before that, just his whole character the whole time. He has very bright colored lips. His cartoon self does too. So it made me think maybe that was just how he looked and they wanted to make it look similar. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I was weird about him.
And it's fine if they did. That's fine.
It's weird because his life got rough after a while.
It did.
And he didn't seem like himself in this movie. So part of me is worried about Macaulay Culkin in this movie.
Me too. It's a little more flat.
I wonder what happened between Home Alone and this movie.
And honestly, when this film actually came out, he was 14.
Yeah.
Because it came out a couple years after they filmed the live action portion.
Kind of creepy.
I mean, he's an actor.
He's an actor.
But you're right. I think the light in his eyes is not the same.
He looks dead in the eyes.
Yeah.
In this movie.
It's rough.
But the voice acting is stellar.
Mm-hmm.
He does great
I think so.
voice acting.
I think he does a really good job. There are some clips of him in the studio and stuff that are pretty funny to watch.
I want to watch it. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. It makes me happy.
So red lipstick, huh?
I don't know. His lips are bright. It's fine. I don't know why they felt. I just don't know why if it was intentional, I don't know why they
Gotta
felt the
look
need
real
to make it
sexy as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know why they need to make it really prominent. But I digress. He bikes home at this point from the library, and he takes the ramp that was scary that they were making fun of him for. Like, he faces his fear on that too, and it's like no more training wheels. Not literally, because he didn't have training wheels before, but he had like everything else. He had so much.
All the safety measures,
vest. Like, he had all the safety measures, but now he's flying free. And I'm pretty sure that I used this scene once to like argue against having to wear my bike helmet on my bike. I'm pretty sure I was like, but Richie didn't have to wear one.
You know what's funny? I was so against wearing a helmet as a kid too. Now I'm like, please wear a helmet.
Oh God, I can't imagine not. If I got on a bike now without a helmet, that's like a death wish.
I mean, I probably still wouldn't wear a helmet, but I would tell 7-year-olds to wear a helmet.
I just feel like it's important.
It's pretty important.
I mean, I'm not saying that I definitely would. Like, I would probably get on a but like road biking, I used to like, this is a way
I rode bike.
Tangent, but I used to road bike, and the thought of getting on one of those without a helmet and doing 20 miles at, 15 miles an hour or whatever, 20 miles an hour. Yeah, that's terrifying to me to think about. So that's what I imagine now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no more training wheels for Richie. He is living the dream. He's ramping his bike.
That was good.
And
definitely good.
I also figured that you'd appreciate just the bike in general. The bike as a vehicle, the bike as a character, because there are so many 90s things that revolve around a bike.
I lived on a bike.
Me too. I did as well.
Yes.
So it's nice to see that represented.
It's the epitome of childhood. It's just a bike.
I also think it's interesting to note that his parents were super supportive. I mean, they were worried about him, at least. They were very engaged in his life, and they weren't absent like a lot of the other latchkey parents were that we discuss. But in order for him to come into his own, they still had to give him space. But they did it consciously. They knew what they were doing. His dad gave him a task and said, "You're capable, you can do this." And they let him do. Of course, it was a lot more than they bargained for. Yeah. But still, they gave him that space, and he had to grow in that space.
I was thinking,
so I thought that was cool.
If I needed something from a hardware store, I would never send my kid to go get it.
Times were different.
Like, I would just go get it.
But the hardware store, like maybe around the corner, like I know that there are people our age who would have done that probably.
Yeah, but he doesn't go around the corner. He goes like miles away.
He does.
It's not around the corner. If it was, that'd be a different movie.
He would have already, it would have made
He would have just gone to the hardware store. It's down the highway. It's not.
He does, yeah.
It's like really far away, which bothers me. I don't know. I'm like,
how far did you send this kid?
You're building a treehouse. You don't send your 10-year-old to the hardware store.
But speaking of the treehouse, he comes home and he passes out and falls asleep in the treehouse, which apparently isn't complete and needed nails, or either that was just a ploy. Maybe he didn't actually need the nails.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confused about the whole adult element of this
movie. The treehouse stands.
There's no logic behind the adults in this movie.
Not really. But they don't exist to be part of the story.
No,
they
it's
just
the
exist
90s. We don't
because
have
you have
parents.
to have parents.
Yeah.
But they were supportive comparatively. That's the takeaway that I got. And I always loved the shadows on the treehouse wall when he falls asleep, because we see a shadow of fantasy horror and adventure. And it's so like, I don't know, the idea of that was so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
That he's dreaming in his treehouse, and these storybooks that just went on this adventure with him are living on in his imagination.
Yeah.
And it's so nice. I also failed to mention, but when he leaves the library, Christopher Lloyd, Mr. Dewey, tells him that he can only check out 2 books. And you think briefly that he's going to have to choose between these characters that he's just gone on this journey with, and he makes an exception. But
yeah,
I thought that was a silly rule. I could check out like 8 or 10 books. I was going to say,
that doesn't make any sense.
I don't know if it was just for that shock factor of like, how can he make this choice?
It didn't make any sense to me as a plot point.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have just been like, I want to take all 3 of these home. Good for you, kid. You know, it shouldn't have been like...
I know. Like, why would you police that? Why are you going to gatekeep? I don't get it. Yeah, I didn't understand that either.
To me. It was really
because I've never heard of a 2-book limit.
There's
before.
no 2-book limit.
Tell us what the limit was at your local library, listener.
I have no idea.
So for me, watching this film as a child, more than most, it felt like it blurred those lines of fantasy and reality. Yeah. It really did. And it made these adventures feel possible. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to become a cartoon or an illustration. But at the same time...
You always hoped.
Yeah, it still felt possible. Something about it felt possible.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I was very into reading as a kid, and I did feel like I went on these adventures. I felt like I knew these characters, so I understood what they were doing and what they were going for, because I could immerse myself in a library in that way.
Yeah.
To the point that it felt like that. So I really appreciated that as a kid.
Yeah.
And again, it might seem old hat now, but the way that they blurred the lines visually just wasn't done. So for the early 90s, it gave us all kind of an imagination. It gave us all a window into what could be possible in film, in storytelling in general. We didn't know it necessarily at the time. It wasn't conscious, but it really opened a lot of doors for CGI and everything that we would see as we grew up.
Right.
And obviously the whole like face your fears, face these trials, like you'll be cured of your fear, all that stuff, that trope, it's tired, it's cliche, like it's everywhere. But as a kid, and kids in general, kids don't know that yet.
No, it's not.
Kids don't know that it's a cliche.
Every generation has to be told that.
Exactly.
Every
You're never going to
time.
stop having to tell a new generation of
Every
children.
year, a kid turns 10 years old and needs to hear
Exactly.
that they can conquer their fears.
Yeah. So it's never going to go away.
It's never going to go
Like you
away.
feel like it's tired, or it's not a plot line that you like to follow, but it's still important and relevant. And kids have no idea that we're watching this. It was one of the earliest memories that I have of something like that.
Mhm.
Any kind of confidence boosting, you can face this fear, you can conquer this. And to see a character having that anxiety, of course, I don't know that they handled it in all the right ways necessarily, the way that I might want something to handle the nuances of anxiety today.
Yeah, sure.
But still, it was representation.
Like, the easiest way to tell a kid that they cannot be who they're meant to be and conquer their fears and take control of their own life is to take away the books they're supposed to read at that age. I'm so angry about this.
But the kids don't know it. That's the other thing that gets to me. They don't know it. They don't know why. And not only that, but if their parents are in agreement, or if the adults in their life are in agreement with the banning of the books, they associate those books as being bad.
Right.
And they may never read them.
Exactly.
It depends on the household that they're in.
Yeah.
The level of influence that's going to have on what happens to, because a lot of times even at school, it might be the only place they could be exposed to certain things.
Right.
So when you're allowing that prejudice to creep in and ban books, ideas, concepts that you personally don't agree with, it hurts everybody.
You're closing off an entire world of knowledge. It's God, so unfortunate. Which is why this movie is so incredible, because this librarian just stumbles across this kid who wanders in from the storm.
Yeah.
And he's like,
I know what you need.
I have just the thing for you.
You do almost also get the impression, because it's not busy, obviously, the library's kind of...
there's no one there.
It's empty, there's no one there.
Mhm.
So you get the impression, too, like, the world's moving on, or the world's forgetting about books, or there's all these other things to do, and so the library is kind of falling by the wayside. And you get that, like, the impression that they want to reinvigorate this idea that the library is cool and the books are cool.
Kind of.
And there, like I said, as we started this podcast, like we started this episode, that was a message that I heard all the time in media as a kid.
Yeah.
Magic School Bus.
Yep.
Wishbone.
Learning is cool. Reading
Learning
is
is cool. And of course they have educational kids shows today, but they have educational kids shows in the way of like, this is the letter A.
Yeah.
They don't we had that too, but they don't necessarily say reading is fun to the same extent.
And not that everything we watched was educational. It just wasn't as stimulating as they have today.
Right.
We had a lot more educational content because that was prized over stimulation.
Yeah.
Makes me think like, look at the 80s. The decade before we were born and growing up and being educated was this early boom in technology. There were video games.
Yeah.
There was a boom in entertainment as far as movies go. It was all this stuff that kids could get into that were not educational. The 80s became the rebel.
Right. There are other options besides a book.
Let's smoke. Let's go to the arcade. Let's be cool. Let's not go to school. Let's get detention and join the Breakfast Club. And then the 90s became, how do we raise children more appropriately? How do we educate children?
How do we get them back?
Let's make them think reading is cool, which spoiler, it is super cool to read a book. So tell your kids that if they don't know that.
Oh, I'm sure if they're listening to this podcast, their kids know.
It is cool, but it makes me think that they were trying to counterbalance the 80s.
Maybe, yeah, it was a correction.
Into the 90s.
In that vein, it continues to strike me how much heart is in these movies.
Yeah.
Despite the dreary, sad, to quote, movie reviews from this, there was this overwhelming, consuming darkness. But when you step back and look at it, they had so much heart and emotion and depth.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I saw this movie so early in my life that it very, very strongly impacted my development in my love of reading, my love of stories and fiction. Because fiction, I say it all the time, I can't stress enough the importance of fiction in my life. I don't think I would survive if fiction didn't exist. Yeah. You have to have that escape to survive. Mm-hmm. And art and fiction are those things. Without that, I cease to exist.
Right.
I saw this really early. I don't know that it caused that. I don't know that it just reinforced what I already felt. But this was an impactful film. And this is one where I would totally say, like, bring it to your kids, let them watch it,
Yes.
Like keep this one alive. For as many faults as it may have as a film, it may not be perfect, but I think that the message still really rings true. And this is how I ended my notes. I said, the real moral of the story, and you've got to love it, is books will always be our friends and teach us stuff. And then I put a little less than 3. They will. They will always be there for us. They will always teach us things. They will always be companions, whether we have other companionship or not in our life.
Yep.
That message helped me in my preteen years.
Yep.
And it helps me now. They'll always be there for us.
Always.
Stories will always be there for us.
Those who read live many, many lives.
Yes. There you go. So yeah, that is the Pagemaster.
That's the Pagemaster. God.
Support your local libraries.
Go to your libraries.
I feel like this is PBS again, but...
One question I had for you was when he comes to after his whole adventure,
mm-hmm.
and he's lying on the floor and he's getting up, he's totally dry.
He is.
So how long has he been on the floor?
It also is darker.
It is
somewhat.
nighttime.
It's nighttime now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say at least an hour, 2.
To be but
an afternoon.
To be that dry, that's like a good 4 or 5. His hair is perfectly dry. His clothes are dry.
It's true.
And then Mr. Dewey's like, you took quite a spill. I'm like, you watched him fall, hit his head.
And didn't help him?
I'm just saying, how long has he been lying there on the floor, totally unconscious?
Yeah, that's a plot point that's hard to
bothered me.
Reconcile.
I guess the only logic is that the whole thing did happen. The librarian is the Pagemaster.
Right.
And we did live this adventure.
Sure. I can accept that.
I have a harder time accepting that, but I guess I have no choice.
You have no choice.
I think he should have woken up with wet hair, but that's just me.
Come here, Macaulay. Let me just spritz your hair a little bit.
Wet glasses.
True.
Why aren't his glasses covered in water? That's what I want to know. I have so many questions.
The hard-hitting questions we ask here on That's Pretty Dark.
This is 2020 with Christian Mom.
Oh my God.
Anyways. Wow. What a great movie.
Yeah, great movie.
Go watch The Pagemaster.
Great time. Go give it a watch, especially if you haven't seen it in a while.
And then go to your local library. Get a library card.
As Arthur would say, having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
That's true. You're right about that. I can't even say that's not true.
Having fun isn't hard.
That was very informative.
We don't know. It's like you get to the end of a phone call and you don't know how to hang up, and you're like, I gotta go. I guess.
Thanks for calling.
We appreciate you very much for listening. We're excited to continue 2022 with you. We've got lots more content that we're researching actively and ready to bring to your ears.
Oh yeah.
So get ready for it.
We'll catch you next time.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.